something nice. And given the
I see you
weekend
got that
we've
out.
just had,
Oh,
it's a great thing to celebrate, isn't it?
yeah. I thought it was just about me not picking on you this morning. You wanted me to say something nice out of the gates, but no, seriously, what a tough weekend here. June 1st. For those watching weeks or months from now, this is the weekend where the protests and obviously demonstrations and also violence across the country kind of got out of hand with the sad situation around George Floyd and the police brutality. So it was tough. It was a beautiful weekend here in the DC suburbs, weather-wise and family-wise. And normally I'd come on here on a Monday morning and talk about that and how refreshed I am heading into another week of workplace conversation. But there's a sadness about what's going on in our country, and it's all related. I don't think it's all disconnected. Do you, Steve? I think there's
No,
a lot of
I think you're
things going
100%
on.
right. I think you're 100% right. There's a lot of pepped up energy.
Yep.
There's a lot of things coming together. That's just I don't want to say I just really careful with words that I'm choosing because
Yeah.
this is coming from a place of absolute empathy and compassion for everything that's going on and what everyone's going through.
Sure.
And it's just staggering when we see the images and yeah, it's just really hard to find the right words today, Mike.
Well, I would say how is this connected to workplace and COVID-19 and strategy and well, it's about leadership, right? Leadership and the media and who do you trust? We've talked about this for
Hmm.
weeks. It's about making those plans to return to the office and taking care of the well-being of our workforce, the employees, our colleagues, our friends, and our families. We were putting it in the context of balancing public health with personal, need to make a living and have a livelihood, and all that is wrapped up in what's going on in the broader society right now. And you're right. I think it's this kind of fuel, this this situation, this police situation in Minneapolis that has now spilled over throughout the country, is something that um, is touching the emotions of very very delicate human beings that are all in a very difficult place of grief, of
Hmm.
fear, of anxiety. And I think it all ties together when it comes to whether it's just this kind of what you do we do here is a benign conversation around returning to work and whether we do our work from home or whether we do it in the office. That's certainly low stakes, although there's a high mental health risk and cost associated with the isolation and all those things we've
Hmm.
been talking about. But then you have it spill over into the broader society, and people are upset. And it's something I just was thinking about. I had to argue with my wife this weekend about some inconsequential thing, and I couldn't believe why we were both getting so worked up about some very minor issue. But it's all pent up. It's this grief. It's this anxiety. It's the whole lockdown, isolation, worry about the future, the unknown, the uncertainty. It all ties together, and that's what's going on. I think in our country, there's a lot of fear and anger, and people are people, no matter what uh, place in life they are or what position they're in. So
Yeah.
we need leadership, and we need people to communicate uh, the solutions here, get us through this. So
Yeah.
hopeful, but concerned certainly.
But I think what you said there, Mike, it's the benign arguments. I think many people have those things because this is a situation that we've never been through before as a population, as individuals, as families, as communities. We just haven't, and we've heard a lot of information about the effects and impact this has on people's mentality, and then we get something that causes a trigger whereby 6 8 weeks ago everyone's celebrating what the first responders are doing and how people are reacting to those and being so thankful, so grateful. And
Hmm.
today we look at where we are, and it's just tough to sort of see those. It's only 6 weeks ago where you see those scenes, and then you see what is going on in all around the country. protests as well in London, Berlin, and other cities around the world also.
We got to be careful to see what's really going on and not believe what's being presented to us necessarily as, whether it's the majority of these people or not. I think peaceful protest and most people have concerns and want to do the right thing and express those concerns peacefully. And then what does the news media, emphasize? They look for
Yeah, yeah,
the violence and the fires and anything that makes it for a good TV bite. And that's what we've been frustrated by over the last 8 weeks when we're trying to discern the facts. We're trying to understand the situation. We're trying to get to the data, what's really going on here. And there's paradoxes in place, right? We love our first responders. We love those people who are out putting their lives at stake for us, the police, the fire department, the public health officials, the doctors and nurses. And then there's a few, I believe it's a very, very small minority of bad people doing bad things in whatever walk of life. And then that gets amplified, and it's all of a sudden presented to us in the news like this is the everybody situation. Just like on the same side as the news is now promoting the violent side of the protests, demonstrations becoming violent. I think that's the very minority of the people that are out there trying to express themselves. So again, I this is not our expertise by any means, and certainly we're not a newscast, but I think it ties into this world of workplace and leadership and human beings, and knowing that there are going to be moments as we head back into the office where people will express themselves through frustration and maybe snap at us or be angry or be in a bad mood, and you're like, what's going on? Did I do something? Have I offended my colleague, or is there something I did wrong in that meeting? No, it's nothing to do with that. It's people, carrying this weight of what's going on in our society and our country and the virus and the fear around that. And it's going to spill over into our work lives as it has. And then there's the issue of safety, Steve. What do you do when you're in a city that's potentially unsafe because of the demonstrations and some of the bad actors out there, and you have to bring your workforce in to those offices?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you also then think about all those businesses who are suffering right now, right, leading up to what happened over the weekend, who are fighting and scrapping for their survival, and then they see their premises being polluted, being burned, being destroyed, and you just must be, what's the point, And it's just those folks I do feel for too, and that's why I was so happy.
Sad is the word I used. I opened with, right? Sad.
Yeah. And that's why I actually got a little upbeat. I was a little cautious coming on today because this topic is, we cannot avoid it, but yet it's right. To what you said, it's not our expertise, and both of us are very obviously thoughtful about the words we're choosing and obviously understanding what people are feeling. But then I was so happy when I saw June 1st to say something nice day, because it's so apt, and it just actually made me smile. And it's sort of, whenever you do have that positive and mindset of gratitude, you actually do get this little release. You get that oxytocin flowing through your body, and let's just hope that sort of can spread through the community, and we can say something nice, and we can feel good, and we can tell people that we're grateful for, be it something they do, something they've said, or they're just simply the relationship that we have with those folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And well said. Thanks for bringing that up, because it is a start of a new month, and going forward, I think looking forward and looking for that direction and that leadership, it's about giving others the benefit of the doubt. You use the word empathy. We can empathize. Certainly, in many of these cases, can't fully comprehend. Just like you and I were talking about our ability to work from home and being very productive and being very, certainly, I guess, disrupted and uncomfortable or inconvenienced in many ways. And certainly that is something that everybody has to deal with. But to put it in perspective, and some folks that are, really they've lost their job, they've lost their livelihood, and now because of what's going on, they've lost their businesses even after they were trying to begin to reopen. Just to empathize and to understand what others are dealing with and where they're coming from. And I know that the temptation is to all of a sudden, when in moments of crisis, is to go back to what you're comfortable with, take sides, and just kind of broad strokes and put everybody in categories and label people. And I see it happening in the news media. I see it happening in reporting. I see on the headlines. But boy, if we could resist that and just be mindful and reminded that these are other people that are just like us in many ways, and in every way other than some situational differences or cultural differences or what have you, and give them the benefit of the doubt, and also recognize that those people you're seeing on TV that are being amplified by the media are not representative of big groups or all people that you see or all of this persuasion or that persuasion. Boy, just to resist the temptation to put people into categories and then making sweeping generalizations, because I've seen the business owners in some of these most affected areas of cities where they're, it's devastating, and they did nothing wrong, and it just doesn't make sense. So it's really hard to get your head around, and that's why you got to bring it back to again, whether it's dealing with this virus out there, and the bigger we look at the picture, and the farther into the future we look and try to, as individuals, think we can, what can we do to control things? It's really impossible to control.
Yeah.
So what can I control as an individual? What can I do personally? What can my attitude be? What can my actions be to keep myself on the right path here? And if we all took that approach, maybe then collectively it would come together in some better way. But boy, it's hard.
Yeah, and one other thought that did go through my head, and it's sort of been highlighted sort of late yesterday and this morning as I sort of did catch up on the news ahead of talking with you today, was so a lot of people out there have no masks. They're in it's a group of people that actually infection is high, and you sort of think about what are going to be the repercussions of this. You just wonder, and it's those people who are obviously have the right to protest and sort of voice their concerns and opinions, and then it's also then looking at the healthcare workers who are potentially going to have a spike. And the reason why it went that way is because we saw the images over Memorial Day weekend with that pool party that we saw, and
Right.
the fact that one person actually has been tested positive, and now they're going through all the different people who that individual connected with at these pool parties. And it's sort of just a reminder of actually how this can affect not just what we're seeing on TV, but maybe a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line.
Yeah, no, I saw those same reports and certainly those same concerns. And again, just like I'm hopeful that maybe somehow this doesn't return to the lockdown levels and doesn't reverse all the hard work we've put in these last 2 months. It certainly is a possibility and a concern, and I get it. It's very, very sad. Again, is the situation that we're dealing with here. So again, we can only do so much, and hopefully, we hope for the best and hope for some shining lights to come out of this, some leaders to, across the globe, locally down to, governmentally to top level leaders. We need inspiration. People need to see someone to, guide them through these situations, not send us down these paths of division, but bring us together as people, as human beings, as certainly as Americans, and then the global community. So those are things we can't control in our little world, but we can certainly look for those opportunities and try to be optimistic. Yep. And hope for the best when it comes to this. So did you read anything? I know it's hard to kind of find your way through the headlines because that seems to be the dominant story for sure.
Yeah.
There's still stories about COVID-19 and the public health concerns. Did you see anything new or anything interesting related to return to office, workplace, things like that?
So I didn't really read anything new. A lot of it
Okay.
was very much the same kind of narrative and sort of the return. What I did do, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see it, I just published this morning. I sort of asked open source workplace contributors one question: what do you wish you knew before lockdown and COVID 19? And I had 7 responses, and I put that together in a narrated video that I published
Oh,
this
really?
morning. Yeah, and
Okay.
it's really interesting to see their perspectives. It's also
Yeah.
really interesting to hear the emotions, the viewpoints, the concern, but then also the positivity, the upside, the opportunity that sort of is ahead. And it's really interesting to sort of as I ran through the video, creating the video, I was like, this it talks to everybody. This video, it's about understanding the foresight. I wish I knew this was coming, which is something we all wish we knew. But also, I wish we knew when it was going to end. Right, that foresight would be awesome. The amount of unknowns, right? We have often talked about the unknown data, but also the unknowns around actually what is severity if I get it there, if I test positive, the actual test kits. There are some that work better than others, and but then also the social and personal connections that we actually enjoyed, that we maybe took for granted, that perhaps now we're sort of longing more for. Right? We talk about the workplace. We all talk about the thing that we miss the most is the social interaction with our teams and with other colleagues, and also
Sure.
the ability to go grab a cup of coffee with our friends. And
Yeah.
it's then all about, okay, so then how do we pivot? How do we look at the opportunity? Christine Herrera is talking about, she's got to set up her own business. All these really expensive tools that she's used to working with, sort of hustling to find the cheaper alternative solutions.
Mm.
And then just it just goes on and on and on from there, and it's fantastic. It's a really great resource that sort of, it actually makes me feel good when I watch it, because it actually takes us back to where we were, maybe 6 weeks ago, and but also
Hmm.
then talks about, okay, what is the future? What can we do? And I think it's a nice video. So go check that
Great. I'll
out.
check that out.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
please do, please do. So that
Yeah.
was. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I read a couple things, and I'll look for that video. And I need to go back and catch up on some other open source workplace resources, and always look forward to that. But there's always articles that I kind of pin and don't get the chance to read. And I went
Mm-hmm.
back over the weekend and read a couple of them. There's just some really smart people out there in our workplace community that are really thinking holistically about the situation we're in, and what the steps forward look like. And thankfully, there are big companies. As often, the thought leadership comes from design firms, architecture firms, furniture companies. There are many, many in our industry that have very strong ideas around, how best to create workplaces that people want to go to. This is pre-pandemic, and certainly now we're going into the future of work, and planning for the future of work. So I love it when I see an article from, say, an HOK, or from a Hayworth Furniture, that talks about the strategic side of things, and all the different elements that we've heard discussed. The fundamentals haven't changed, I don't think, Steve. Certainly the environment in which we're operating has changed, and the virus will forever have an impact on us. And but the things around human beings and safety, and what we want and what we need, the fact that no one size fits all for organizations, culture comes into play. You know, so it's good reminder, because I think a lot of times it's easy in these situations to get caught up in, thinking there's a silver bullet or some solution that's going to help all organizations prepare for a return to work, or manage the workforce of the future, and manage the safety elements. And all. It's so different depending on what your needs are, and what your organization's needs are, what individuals' needs are. So I enjoy those articles and those conversations, and we'll continue to have them here. I'm trying to think of an example to run by you, but what's the I mean, here it is, June 1st. I think a lot more organizations are reopening offices, at least to some limited capacity, now
Mm-hmm.
than they were a week or two ago. I
Yeah.
know it's been a trickle, and we're looking forward to seeing that data come in. How are people doing? How's it
Right.
really working in real
Right.
life?
Right.
And what's the feedback and what's the result of some of these processes and these protocols being put into place? Have you heard any anecdotal stories yet? I know it's probably too soon to make sweeping judgments, but any interesting anecdotal stories from your network?
So I think you're right. I think a lot of organizations are looking to begin that opening process, and a lot of it may be in specific areas of the United States, but I think a lot of it is going to be internationally because they're probably further ahead in sort of the COVID-19 response and where the virus sits as within the community. So I think there's going to see some things from there, and I think we'll learn as those locations open what is the employee sentiment of being in the office, who goes into the office, how is the office being used, what purposes are people getting in for, what are the problems, what are the benefits of being in an office. What's also going to be interesting is, do people go in one time, see the office and go, nah, this isn't for me, or do they go back a second and third and fourth and fifth day? That's what's going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be a slow trickle back. And what I suspect people will do is they'll wake up one day and they go, I feel like going in today, or I don't feel like going in today, and it'll just be how people feel. It's going to be fascinating. I did have a couple of interviews over the weekend. I had one with Andrew Sagal from Boxer Property, and he was sort of explaining to me about on his property, how many people actually are back, how many people are signing leases. These are leases people renewing, but also he gave me a number of how many people have actually are planning to relocate to his properties. And I was surprised.
Really?
I was surprised actually that so many companies were actually signing leases to relocate, because there are huge concerns around that, because you can't, one, physically go see the building. Maybe you can because they're local businesses, but if you're an enterprise, it's not often, or sometimes it is, depending on where the actual organization is, but the head of real estate who actually go and look and view properties may not be located there. So I was surprised at the number he actually quoted it saying are actually planning to relocate their teams to his properties, which is great. And it sort of speaks to the volume of transactions that are actually taking place. And if people are moving real estate, then there's probably other activity in the market as well. So
Yeah.
it sort of speaks to your point. You mentioned, there are people around the country who actually are actively in the office. The organizations do want them to go back. Office has been in Houston. I don't know how many people go back in the office in your head office. And it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. So I think there'll be pockets around the US where there will be activity, and activity will grow. And I think there's going to be other locations where it'll still be slow and steady.
Yeah, certainly. I can't give you specific numbers, but I just know that the iOffice team has been very busy, and new customers, new requests, new interest in our tools, because it's so tied to this idea of rethinking floor plates and the layouts of space, and creating distance, and also creating just safe protocols and the technology tools that allow people to interface with less touch points, less potential for exposure to the virus, and just being able to manage things. Manage the traffic in a space, manage the schedules for workers. Split shifts and 4-day work weeks and all these things you read about. They're all being tried, and tools are required to make those things happen. So yeah, it's out there, it's happening. It's early days, as you say, and even in Texas, where I think we're reopening this week finally. We kept pushing it back because there was no real urgency for our team, but I think we're going back with a 25% limit as far as the occupancy rate. So we're trying to determine who needs to be there, who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's, again, driven by individuals and levels of interest, and also levels of vulnerability. And I apologize for any noises you hear. That my neighbor's having some work done on their house. So if you're hearing the tapping of hammers, it's definitely happening on my end here. So apologies to the audience. But New York City is going to be really interesting to watch. The fact that I've got you out there, Steve, eyes on the ground, and an actual person who is used to working both, in the city as well as out in one of the boroughs, or on the island, I guess, is where you live, right?
Yep.
So you get to see all those things in real time, in real life, and real experience. And it'll be interesting to see, as I think, didn't Governor Cuomo begin to announce a phase one reopening by the middle of June or something? So we're getting close.
June 8th, I believe he plans to open, which will be really interesting to see how that unfolds and who that opens up to, and who then will take advantage of that. You know, the challenge for New York obviously is the transportation system, right? So people have to use commuter travel to get into the city, and then the subway to actually get through the city. So I think those people that live in the city will probably be grateful and thankful, and will be able to access the office. And then we're then really going to understand, as companies start to open up, what is it like going through a building lobby, getting in the elevator, coming out and using your space. I think that's where it's going to be quite a challenge, and I don't know whether buildings are communicating how they're going to set times or set limits on when people go into the elevator. Will it be long lines? How they're managing those things? These are all the unknown factors, but it's certainly something that I think will be communicated more and more as the city opens up. And you know, businesses must be very happy that there is going to be a community, there is going to be movement. But it'll be interesting to see who goes back. It really will be.
All I know is the imagination is often
worse.
One thing, and then reality is another. I can't wait for the reality to set in. But this is getting pretty noisy here, so I'm going to let you go early, I think, today. This has been great to kind of reestablish Happy June. And
say something nice, Dave. Say something nice to somebody today.
Steve, you've been very helpful to me as we've managed these last 2 months. So thank you. That's my nice thing I want to say to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And I'm glad it only took 26 minutes for us to get there where you said thank you. On that note, I appreciate it, Mike. Have a great day. And we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers. Bye.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.